How should slavery actually be taught in schools? The full, unvarnished truth, or a more comfortable, simplified version? It's a huge debate, and it gets to the heart of what we want education to be. Let's break it down. In many classrooms across the country, the topic of slavery often gets boiled down to a few key bullet points in a textbook. You learn the dates, like 1619. You learn about the Triangle Trade. You learn about the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation. It's presented as a chapter in a history book, something that happened, was resolved, and is now over. But critics argue that this approach is a massive disservice. They say it sanitizes one of the most brutal and foundational aspects of American and world history, turning a profound human tragedy into just another topic to memorize for a test. It distances students from the reality of what happened, making it feel like a distant, abstract concept instead of a system that affected millions of real people in deeply personal and horrifying ways. On the other side of the debate, you have people who argue that what's currently taught is sufficient or even too much. They worry that going deeper into the subject could be too graphic or emotionally overwhelming for young students. There's also concern that a more detailed curriculum could become politically charged, accused of pushing a specific agenda or making students feel guilty or resentful about the past. So we're left with this central conflict. Is the history of slavery being dangerously undertaught, or is it being over? This question forces us to confront some really difficult choices about what we want our kids to learn. For example, should the curriculum include the raw, explicit details of the violence and dehumanization that were central to the institution of slavery? I'm talking about the day-to-day brutality, the family separations, the psychological torture. On one hand, supporters say that without these details, students can't possibly grasp the true horror of what happened. They argue that shielding students from the ugly truth is a form of historical denial. But on the other hand, some parents and educators believe that such graphic content could be traumatizing for children, especially younger ones. They question if there is a way to teach the severity of slavery without exposing kids to a level of violence they are not emotionally equipped to handle. Then there's the economic dimension. Should lessons focus on how the economies of not just the South, but the entire United States and even European powers were built on the foundation of slave labor? Teaching this would mean connecting slavery to the rise of industries like cotton, sugar, and finance, and showing how that wealth accumulation has had lasting effects that continue to shape our world today. Those who support this say it's essential for understanding modern inequality. It's not just about the past, it's about the present. Opponents, however, might see this as an attempt to inject modern political debates about economic justice into a history lesson, arguing it can lead to a narrative of blame rather than historical understanding. And that brings us to the legacy of slavery. How much should schools connect slavery to contemporary issues like systemic racism, the wealth gap, and disparities in the justice system? Proponents argue that you cannot understand these modern problems without tracing their roots back to slavery and the structures that followed it. It's about drawing a clear line from the past to the present. But others are wary of this approach. They fear it promotes a divisive narrative, framing history as an ongoing battle and potentially fostering resentment or guilt among students based on their race. They believe history class should focus on what happened in the past, and that, connecting it to current events, strays into the realm of social commentary or activism. Finally, there's the question of focus. Should the story of slavery be centered on the trauma, the pain, and the suffering? Or should it prioritize stories of resilience, resistance, and the incredible achievements of Black people both during and after slavery? Some say that focusing too much on victimhood can be disempowering and that it's crucial to highlight the agency and strength of enslaved people who fought back, created rich cultures, and survived against impossible odds. Others counter that while stories of resilience are vital, downplaying the sheer brutality and suffering risks, minimizing the crime itself. They worry that an overemphasis on positive stories can inadvertently make slavery seem less terrible than it actually was. Each of these questions presents a genuine dilemma with passionate arguments on both sides. So what do the experts say? When you talk to historians and education specialists, a consensus begins to emerge. They do not see it as a choice between teaching the hard truth and the uplifting stories. Instead, they advocate for a curriculum built on three core pillars: accuracy, context, and humanity. Accuracy means teaching the history as it happened, based on evidence and primary sources without sanitizing the uncomfortable parts. It means being honest about the violence, the economics, and the long-term consequences. Context means placing slavery within its historical moment, explaining the ideologies and systems that allowed it to exist and thrive, not just in America, but globally. It's about understanding the why, not just the what, and most importantly, humanity. This means moving beyond dates and laws to tell the human stories. Yes, the stories of immense suffering, but also the stories of resistance, of culture, of family, of survival, and of the creation of new traditions and forms of expression. The goal isn't to induce shame or guilt. The goal is to build understanding and empathy. It's not about propaganda. It's about presenting a full, complex, and truthful picture based on historical evidence. It's about equipping students with the critical thinking skills to look at the past and understand how it continues to shape the world they live in today. So we're back to our central question. Where is the right balance? Should schools teach the harsh, detailed truth of slavery? Or should they provide a version that is carefully curated based on age and what we deem to be emotional maturity? Is there a way to do both? Let me know what you think in the comments. This is a complex topic, so please keep the discussion respectful and constructive. Debates about history should be an opportunity to learn and grow, not to divide us further. Thanks for watching.